According to the Book of Enoch, the gates of heaven were opened, and beings not meant to walk the earth crossed through. But the text does not describe a simple doorway. It speaks of boundaries in the sky, chambers of wind, paths for the stars, storehouses of fire, and guarded entrances leading into realms beyond human sight. For centuries, readers assumed the Watchers forced their way down from heaven, yet the oldest surviving versions suggest something more complicated. The question is not only who descended, it is who allowed the passage to open. Historians still debate whether these gates were symbolic, astronomical, geographical, or part of an ancient vision of the universe. Manuscripts preserved in Ethiopia, fragments recovered near the Dead Sea, and translation differences have only deepened the uncertainty. One overlooked name may change the entire story. Before this investigation ends, we will uncover 3 things: why Mount Hermon became the chosen place of descent, which figure is connected to heaven's hidden entrances, and why the Book of Enoch's description of the gates may preserve an older tradition than many readers realize. But first, we must return to the night the Watchers came down. The story begins with a decision made above the human world. The Book of Enoch calls the beings involved Watchers. They are presented as heavenly figures, assigned to observe the earth. But observation becomes desire. Ancient text. And it came to pass, when the children of men had multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely daughters. The sentence sounds almost ordinary. Then the boundary between heaven and earth begins to weaken. The Watchers see human women. They desire them. Their leader, Semyaza, fears the others will abandon the plan and leave him to face punishment alone. So they bind themselves with an oath. But where they make that oath is the first clue. They descend upon Mount Hermon. The mountain rises along the modern borders of Lebanon, Syria, and the Golan Heights. In winter, snow gathers across its upper slopes. Cold wind moves over dark ridges. Springs emerge below, feeding rivers that travel south toward the Jordan, even from a distance. Hermon dominates the horizon. Its summit appears suspended between earth and sky. Why would an ancient writer choose this mountain historical evidence? Mount Hermon was not an invented landscape. It was a real and imposing landmark in the ancient Near East. Settlements, shrines, and sacred traditions surrounded the region for centuries. Its name has often been connected with ideas of devotion, prohibition, or something placed under a sacred ban. The precise linguistic history remains debated, but the association fits the story's central act. The Watchers do not merely arrive there. They swear an oath that cannot easily be undone. The Book of Enoch says, the mountain received its name because of that binding agreement. Possible interpretation for an ancient audience. Hermon may have represented a natural threshold. Its height, storms, snow, and isolation made it an ideal meeting place between divine and human realms. But was the mountain only symbolic? Or did the author believe a real descent occurred there? Most readers stop here. The next passage changes everything. The text names the leaders of the Watchers. Semyaza stands first. Others follow, each linked in later passages with forbidden instruction. One teaches enchantments. Another teaches the cutting of roots. Others reveal signs connected with the earth, the sun, the moon, and the movement of the stars. Then comes Azazel. Ancient text. Azazel taught men to make swords, and knives, and shields, and breastplates. The passage continues with metalworking, ornaments, cosmetics, and precious stones. These are not described as neutral discoveries. They appear as knowledge delivered before humanity was prepared to use it. The explanation is important. The sin of the Watchers is not simply that they took human wives. They crossed a boundary of knowledge. They transferred secrets from one order of existence into another. That raises a more difficult question. were the gates of heaven open to release beings, information, or both. The descendants of these unions are described as giants. In the narrative, they consume what humanity produces. When the food is gone, violence spreads. The earth becomes filled with blood. Rain falls on mountain stone. Rivers continue toward the valleys, but below the calm sky, the human world is collapsing. Ancient text. And the earth laid accusation against the lawless ones. This is more than poetic language. The earth itself becomes a witness. Mainstream scholarly view. Most scholars read this section as a Jewish interpretation of the brief and difficult passage in Genesis 6, where the sons of God take the daughters of men and produce mighty offspring. Genesis gives only a few lines. Enoch expands those lines into a complete cosmic rebellion. The watchers gain names, motives, responsibilities, and punishments. Their actions explain violence, corruption, warfare, and forbidden practices. This kind of expansion was common in ancient interpretation. A short biblical mystery could become the seed of a much larger tradition, but that was only the beginning. The surviving Book of Enoch is not preserved in a single ancient manuscript for many centuries. The complete work was known mainly through the language of the Ethiopian Church. The full text survived in Ge'ez, a classical Ethiopian language. Then fragments appeared among the Dead Sea Scrolls, in caves near the northwestern shore of the Dead Sea. Ancient pieces of Enoch were recovered in Aramaic. The landscape could hardly be more different from Hermon. The air near Qumran is dry and heavy. Pale cliffs rise above a salt-colored basin. Heat presses against the stone. Cave openings sit in silence above the water. Inside those caves, fragments survived that proved the Enochic tradition was circulating among Jewish communities before Christianity began. Historical evidence. The Aramaic fragments do not preserve every section of the later Ethiopian version, but they confirm that major portions of the work are ancient. They also reveal something crucial. The story was copied, studied, and valued by people living during the Second Temple period. This was not a medieval legend added centuries later. Still, the fragments created new problems. Words differ. Names vary. Damaged lines require reconstruction. A single uncertain letter can change the identity of an angel or the meaning of an action. Another manuscript preserves a different version. Some lists of the watchers do not match perfectly. Translators must decide how unfamiliar names should be spelled. Ancient scribes sometimes copied sounds they may not have fully understood. This is where historians disagree. Was Semyaza the supreme leader of the rebellion? Was Azazel the central corrupter? Or did the tradition combine several older stories? Mainstream scholarly view. Many specialists believe the Book of the Watchers developed through stages. Traditions about illicit unions, forbidden teaching, giants, and an angelic punishment may have circulated separately before being woven together. That possibility matters because the text does not assign every act to the same figure. Semyaza organizes the oath. Azazel spreads destructive knowledge. Other watchers reveal celestial secrets. And later, Enoch is taken through the architecture of the heavens by angelic guides. The mystery is no longer about one rebellion. It is about a system of guarded boundaries. What comes next is even stranger. Enoch does not remain beside Mount Hermon. He is led beyond the inhabited world. He sees places where stars are confined. He approaches mountains of fire. He hears rushing waters and witnesses regions where light and darkness appear to be stored. The language becomes visionary, but also strangely structured. Ancient text. I saw the treasuries of all the winds. First comes the description. The winds have chambers. The stars follow appointed courses. Openings in heaven regulate movements across the world. Then comes the question. Are these images poetic explanations of nature, Or does the text describe a celestial temple with controlled entrances? Possible interpretation. Ancient people often imagined the cosmos as ordered architecture. Heaven could contain doors, windows, chambers, pillars, and storehouses. Such imagery appears in several Near Eastern traditions. Yet Enoch goes further. The gates are not decorative. They control what enters the world. Wind passes through them. Rain passes through them. Stars travel according to them. And certain beings appear to know how those gates operate. That detail will become essential, because the Watchers descended to Hermon. But the text never clearly says they created heaven's entrances. Someone already knew the paths. Someone understood the boundaries. And hidden among the names and journeys is a figure whose connection to those gates has been overlooked. The name is Uriel, not Semyaza, not Azazel. And that difference changes the investigation. Ancient text. And Uriel showed me the gates through which the sun rises. The line appears in the astronomical portion of the Enochic tradition, often called the Book of the Luminaries. First comes the claim: Uriel leads Enoch through a carefully ordered heaven. He reveals 6 gates in the east and 6 in the west. Through them, the sun rises and sets during different seasons. Then comes the explanation. The text does not say Uriel built the gates. It does not clearly say he opened them with his own hands, but he knows their positions, their sequence, and the laws governing their movement. Then comes the question: why would the same tradition that condemns forbidden heavenly knowledge preserve a detailed tour of heaven's entrances? This is the twist. The Book of Enoch contains 2 very different revelations. The Watchers disclose secrets without permission. Uriel reveals secrets under divine authority. One form of knowledge corrupts, the other restores order. Mainstream scholarly view. Most scholars do not treat every section of 1st Enoch as the work of one author. The collection developed over time. Its books reflect different periods, interests, and literary styles. The Book of the Watchers focuses on rebellion. The astronomical material focuses on calculation, seasons, and cosmic order. Later editors placed these traditions within the same larger collection. That means that the gates of heaven may not refer to the Watcher's route of descent at all. They may belong to a separate map of the universe, but the distinction creates an even greater mystery. Ancient text. He showed me all their laws exactly. Uriel is not simply pointing toward sunrise. He explains a system. The sun changes gates as the year progresses. Daylight lengthens, then shortens. The moon follows its appointed pattern. Stars move according to fixed commands. In this vision, heaven is not chaotic. It operates like a sacred mechanism. Possible interpretation. Some readers identify Uriel as the figure who opened heaven for Enoch because he grants access to knowledge normally hidden from humanity. That interpretation is possible, but it is not a direct statement from the manuscript. The text presents Uriel as guide, interpreter, and guardian of cosmic order. Saying he physically opened the gates goes beyond what the surviving words clearly establish. The translation difference matters. In some modern retellings, showed the gates, led me to the gates, and opened heaven are blended together. They should not be treated as identical. Historical evidence. The Aramaic fragments from Qumran confirm that astronomical traditions associated with Enoch circulated in antiquity. They reveal a community deeply concerned with calendars and sacred time. For such readers, the gates were not merely strange architecture. They helped explain when festivals began, how seasons changed, and whether human worship followed heavenly order. The Watchers violated that order. Uriel explained it. Enoch was permitted to witness it. So perhaps the figure who exposed heaven's gates was not the rebel who descended through them. Perhaps it was the loyal angel who showed humanity where those boundaries had always been. Yet that raises the larger question. Were Enoch's gates imaginary doors in a symbolic sky, or were they an ancient attempt to describe real patterns moving above the earth? To understand what Enoch's gates may have meant, we must first step outside the manuscript, stand beneath an open sky before dawn. The horizon is dark blue. The ground is cold. Wind moves softly through dry grass. Then a thin line of light appears in the east. The sun seems to emerge from a precise opening. Day after day, that opening shifts. It moves northward for part of the year, pauses, then slowly returns south. To an ancient observer, the horizon itself could appear divided into gates, historical evidence. Long before modern telescopes, agricultural societies tracked the rising and setting points of the sun. Stone alignments, temples, and observation platforms were often positioned toward solstices, equinoxes, or significant stars. These structures do not prove the Book of Enoch's celestial geography, but they show that ancient people watched the sky with great precision. This has led a few scholars to compare Enoch's eastern and western gates with changing solar positions along the horizon. The similarities are intriguing, although no consensus exists. At northern latitudes, sunrise does not occur at one fixed location. Its position changes throughout the year. Near the summer solstice, it rises farther north. Near the winter solstice, it rises farther south. Enoch's system divides this movement into 6 eastern gates and 6 western gates. Ancient text. Through each of these gates, the sun rises and sets. The text presents an ordered sequence. The sun enters through one gate during a portion of the year, then advances to another. The days lengthen and shorten according to that movement. The explanation resembles observation, but the numbers do not always fit modern astronomy perfectly. That is where the evidence becomes more complicated. Mainstream scholarly view. The astronomical book appears to use a calendar of 364 days. This number is elegant. It divides evenly into 52 weeks. Important dates return on the same weekday each year. The seasons can be arranged into symmetrical sections, but the actual solar year is slightly longer. Without adjustment, a 364-day calendar would slowly drift away from the seasons. Some scholars believe the Enochic system was an ideal sacred calendar rather than a purely observational one. Others suggest that its users may have applied corrections not fully preserved in the surviving text. Either way, the gates organize time. They do not simply decorate heaven, and the next detail is rarely discussed. Uriel's teaching connects astronomy with morality. The sun, moon, winds, and stars obey their appointed courses. The watchers do not. Possible interpretation. The physical universe becomes a model of obedience. Celestial bodies remain within boundaries. Rebellious beings cross them. Human violence begins when those distinctions collapse. Seen this way, the gates represent more than positions on the horizon. They represent limits. But could geography also have influenced the vision Mount Hermon stands in a region where weather changes quickly? Clouds gather around the summit. Snowmelt feeds springs below. Storms arrive through valleys and mountain corridors from the lower slopes. Wind can seem to pour from hidden openings in the landscape. Ancient text. Enoch describes gates of the winds and storehouses from which weather emerges. Modern meteorology explains wind through pressure differences, temperature, terrain, and the rotation of the earth. The manuscript does not anticipate that science. Still, ancient observers could recognize recurring patterns. They knew certain winds brought rain, others brought heat, dust, or cold. Some researchers have noted that assigning winds to specific gates reflects a practical geography of direction. The language is mythic, but the observations beneath it may have been real. That does not make the gates physical structures. It suggests that architecture gave ancient writers a way to describe invisible systems. What comes next is even stranger. Similar cosmic architecture appears beyond Enoch. In Mesopotamian traditions, the sky could be imagined as layered and controlled by divine powers. The sun god traveled through appointed regions. Heavenly bodies followed established paths. In biblical poetry, the heavens contain windows, storehouses, and chambers. Ancient text. The Hebrew Bible speaks of the windows of heaven opening during the flood. It also describes storehouses of snow and hail. These expressions do not require literal buildings above the clouds. Mainstream scholarly view. Many historians understand such images as part of an ancient Near Eastern cosmic vocabulary. Natural forces were explained through familiar structures: doors, chambers, pillars, foundations, and reservoirs. The universe was pictured as a vast, ordered house. Yet Enoch's version is unusually detailed. The gates have numbers. The movements have schedules. The angelic guide records the sequence. This has led some scholars to see the work as a bridge between mythic cosmology and early mathematical astronomy. Not science in the modern sense, not random fantasy either. It is a world where careful observation is expressed through sacred imagery. Another modern comparison comes from linguistics. Words translated as gate, opening, or portal can carry overlapping meanings. A gate may be a constructed doorway. It may also mean an entrance, passage, or point of access. Translation can make the imagery sound more mechanical than the original intended. Possible interpretation when Enoch says the sun passes through a gate. The author may be describing a zone on the horizon. When Uriel shows Enoch the gates, he may be revealing the hidden order behind seasonal change. And when later readers say someone opened the gates of heaven, they may be summarizing a scene the ancient text describes more carefully. But astronomy and language cannot answer every question. Why place this knowledge in the hands of an angel? Anthropology offers one possible clue. In many traditional societies, specialized knowledge is linked with authority. Calendars determine planting, ritual, travel, and communal gatherings. Those who understand the sky possess power. The Book of Enoch does not reject knowledge itself. It distinguishes between knowledge given at the proper time and knowledge stolen across forbidden boundaries. That distinction returns us to the original mystery. The Watchers revealed weapons, enchantments, and hidden practices. Uriel revealed seasons, movements, and appointed laws. One disclosure damaged the human world. The other explained how order could be restored. The gates, then, may stand at the meeting point of astronomy, theology, and memory. They reflect what ancient observers saw. They express what religious communities believed. And they preserve questions that modern evidence cannot fully settle. The Book of Enoch did not disappear because a single authority erased it. Its history is more complicated. Different communities preserved different collections of sacred writings. Some texts were copied widely. Others survived only where particular religious traditions continued to value them. First Enoch remained especially important in Ethiopia. Historical evidence. The Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church preserved the complete work in Ge'ez. Because of that tradition, modern readers can access sections that vanished from most other manuscript cultures. Elsewhere, Enoch survived only in fragments, quotations, and memories. The dry caves near the Dead Sea preserved pieces in Aramaic. Greek fragments survived in scattered forms. Early Christian writers referred to the work, sometimes with respect and sometimes with caution. Then the trail narrowed. This is where historians disagree. The New Testament letter of Jude includes language closely related to a prophecy found in Enoch. Ancient text, behold. The Lord comes with 10,000s of his holy ones. The resemblance is unmistakable. It shows that at least one early Christian author knew an Enochic tradition and considered it useful. But quotation did not guarantee permanent scriptural status. Early Christian communities inherited different reading practices. They debated which books should be read publicly, which carried apostolic authority, and which were valuable without belonging to the final canon. Mainstream scholarly view. The formation of biblical canons took place gradually. There was no single meeting where every community instantly accepted the same list. Regional usage, language, theology, and tradition all shaped the outcome. Enoch faced several difficulties. Its visions were complex. Its angelology was elaborate. Its calendar differed from systems that became dominant. And its explanation of evil placed enormous weight on rebellious heavenly beings. Other Jewish and Christian traditions increasingly emphasized different interpretations of Genesis, sin, demons, and human responsibility. The next detail is rarely discussed. Language also shaped survival. A manuscript disappears quickly when communities stop reading the language in which it was copied. Aramaic traditions declined. Greek copies became rare. Latin Christianity did not preserve a complete translation. Without continuous copying, parchment decays, ink fades, libraries burn, scatter, or are abandoned. A book can vanish without anyone ordering its destruction. Possible interpretation. Enoch may have become controversial, partly because it answered questions later theologians preferred to leave open. Who were the sons of God in Genesis? Where did demons come from? Could angels desire human women? Was forbidden knowledge responsible for civilization's violence? The text offered bold answers. But bold answers create problems when later interpreters develop different frameworks. Some understood the Genesis passage as describing fallen angels. Others interpreted the sons of God as human rulers or descendants of Seth. As those alternatives spread, Enoch's expanded story became less necessary, but it was never entirely forgotten. In Ethiopia, it remained scripture. In Western scholarship, interest revived when travelers and manuscript collectors brought Gaia's copies to Europe. Later, the Dead Sea Scroll discoveries confirmed that the work had deep Jewish roots. That discovery corrected an older assumption. Enoch was not merely an unusual Christian-era composition preserved in a distant church. Large portions belonged to the religious world of ancient Judaism. Historical evidence. The Qumran fragments showed that Enochic writings circulated centuries before many surviving medieval manuscripts. Yet they also revealed that the collection developed over time. There was no simple original volume identical to every later copy. Mainstream scholarly view today? Scholars usually study First Enoch as a collection of related works, rather than a single composition written at one moment. That explains some of its tensions. Different sections emphasize different angels, calendars, judgments, and heavenly journeys. It also explains why the question of who opened heaven's gates has no easy answer. The phrase belongs partly to the ancient text and partly to later interpretation. Uriel reveals the gates. The watchers cross a boundary. Enoch receives access. Later readers combine those scenes. And from that combination, a stronger claim emerges than the manuscripts themselves clearly make. The hidden history is not a story of simple suppression. It is a story of survival through one tradition, loss through others, and rediscovery through fragments buried in silence. The Book of Enoch never gives us a single scene in which one angel physically unlocks heaven. What it gives us is more subtle. Ancient text. The Watchers descend to Mount Hermon and violate a boundary between realms. Azazel spreads knowledge associated with weapons, ornament, and corruption. Uriel guides Enoch through the ordered movements of the sun, moon, winds, and stars. Enoch is shown gates, chambers, and paths hidden from ordinary human sight. These are the claims of the text, historical evidence. Fragments found near the Dead Sea confirm that major Enochic traditions circulated among Jewish communities before the rise of Christianity. The complete work survived through the Ethiopian Christian tradition. The manuscripts also show that Enoch developed as a collection. Its sections emerged in different periods and were later preserved together. That history makes the mystery richer, but less simple. Mainstream scholarly view. Most scholars understand the heavenly gates as part of ancient cosmology. They may describe seasonal positions on the horizon, the movement of celestial bodies, or a sacred architecture used to explain natural order. Uriel is generally understood as a guide and revealer. The Watchers are rebels who cross forbidden limits. The surviving text does not clearly identify either as the literal builder or opener of heaven's gates. Possible interpretation. Later readers may have fused these separate traditions. The Watchers opened the boundary through rebellion. Uriel opened it through revelation. Enoch crossed it through divine permission. Each meaning is possible, but none should be mistaken for proven history. The strongest evidence tells us that ancient communities studied the sky carefully. They observed shifting sunrise points, seasonal winds, changing daylight, and the regular paths of stars. They expressed those observations through the language of gates and chambers. What remains uncertain is whether the authors believed those structures existed exactly as described, or whether the vision transformed natural patterns into sacred imagery. If the gates were intended literally, they preserve a remarkable map of an unseen universe. If they were symbolic, they reveal an equally powerful idea. The cosmos remained stable because everything respected its appointed boundary. Everything, that is, except the Watchers. Perhaps the deepest mystery is not who opened heaven, but what entered the world when the boundary no longer held.